The Dauntless. His days start off quite pleasantly more often than not. Their schedules don't always line up, but when they do, he awakens with the feathery Lady Tycanped to one side and the very, very cuddly Ambassador Tal to the other. Things were a little awkward at first as both women tended to sleep in the nude, but thankfully the competitions had stayed friendly-ish. Friendly-ish. Hence, why more than half the time he's with his alien wife's admiral sister and wakes up nearly smothered between them as they had competed to see who could cuddle him closer. Thankfully, the rest of the typical morning headed off with a bit more dignity. With the Dauntless's excellent location on the main spire of the Galactic Federation, there was no real rush, so everyone was able to get up and around with ease. Thankfully, the short work days of non-human life played heavily to his advantage. He was able to get all his political ambassadorial duties straightened out, take a short break with both or either woman depending on schedules, and then get to corralling his giant herd of heavily trained and armed cats that make up a military. Thankfully, after figuring out where the limits were, the vast majority of the soldiers were content to stay there, especially as those limits included betting rings, fight clubs, stills of all sorts, and an amateur porn industry that appeared to be exclusively made of recut commercials and security footage of alien women. The miniature porn industry was actually drying up very quickly. Why bother looking for pictures of beautiful women when you could easily have one in your arms and happy to be there? But work is work, and the day starts with a gusto. A simple but filling breakfast for the girls and a large coffee with a biscuit for him. It leads into all three of them heading to the main structure and then parting ways, often with a few kisses, to their own offices. Most days don't have any massive meetings or entire council debates, but today is a bit of an exception. He has been called forward to answer a complaint from another ambassador. Lady Area 4, the representative of a rather large area of hostile space to humanity. The hateful glare the Al-4 affixes him with almost reminds him of his ex-wife, except the tattoos and non-human features, of course. Very well. The council has been called to deliberate between Admiral Garfield Cistern of the Undaunted and Lady Garisa Aria 4 of the Morican system. The chamber is yours, Lady Tycanped announces, and the general, murmuring and muttering, quiets down. Both Lady Area 4 and Admiral Cistern walk up to a pair of opposed podiums. They are in plain view of the entire hall and pointedly away from any electronics, excepting the microphones at the podiums. Camera drones zoom in to get the best view of each of them as the massive chamber observes. Honored women of the council, Lady Area 4 begins, pointedly ignoring that at least 5% of all seats had a male ambassador or lord in it. While we have all been entertained by the unusual and odd actions of the so-called Undaunted, hasn't this farce gone on long enough? They are clearly some off-breed of Tret that have genetically modified themselves to be null-resistant, which, while an impressive feat on its own, is not worthy of being part of this council. Perhaps an award for scientific excellence and academic brilliance, but not a speaking position in the heart of the galaxy. One of those days, is it? Well, that leaves the question of if her entire point is humans look a lot like Tret, something you could accuse a sizable percentile of the galaxy of, or if it's just the lead up into something more, the thin part of the wedge that she's trying to ram in. Hell, the actual point of contention might not even be anything about the Undaunted or humanity, or possibly no point at all. There are several scheduled points of contention today, and if she opposes any one of them but doesn't think she'll get support, she can essentially filibuster to run out the clock. For the sake of efficiency motions that have been brought to the council but not gotten to multiple times are considered settled unless the motion is refiled. A bad system, but bad systems can be used to one's advantage. Lady Area 4, I trust that if you're bringing this case before the Galactic Council, that you have some form of evidence or documentation to somehow prove these accusations. If not, then I am forced to accuse and possibly sue you for slander. Admiral Cistern replies, and there's a slight intake of breath. They expected an argument and got a threat. Let's see how Lady Area 4 deals with her plans being ripped apart. Admiral Cistern, that is entirely unnecessary, and, in other words, you cannot actually offer corroborating evidence to your spurious accusations and wish to change the subject. He continues to apply pressure, and the look of sheer frustration that crosses her face is rather satisfying. How dare you? Voices are to be kept at an even and reasonable tone and level, Lady Area 4. You are quite aware of the rules of this chamber. Lady Tycanped snaps out as Lady Area 4's microphone is momentarily disabled. You're merely favoring him because you've been getting the Gobi's sloppy seconds. Lady Area 4 accuses, and Lady Tycanped's tail feathers fan out and take on a metallic sheen. My accuser evidently has nothing but indignity and insult to offer where evidence and documentation is needed. As such, I motion that this debate be dismissed and struck from the record entirely so we may get to more important affairs. Admiral Cistern chimes in, and Lady Tycanped visibly regains control of herself, and her tail slowly goes down. The metallic sheen remains, however. No, that is completely. Lady Area 4 begins. A vote has been called for. Counselors, make your decision. Lady Tycanped interrupts Lady Area 4, and in the center of the chamber a holographic display with in favor and opposed appears, and very quickly in favor overtakes opposed. The motion is approved. The previous debate will be struck from the record, and we shall proceed to the next point of order. The dirty look Lady Area 4 shoots towards Admiral Cistern tells him that he just did exactly what she didn't want him to. Good. Being used for someone else's plans does not sit well with him, no matter how inevitable it ultimately is. They both return to their seats, and Admiral Cistern can't help but smile to himself. Mature and in control, not bad when dealing with someone who's got an age advantage of centuries on him. Of course, this is politics. That whole affair might have been exactly what she was looking for, or a distraction, or any number of things. These people are obsessed with spinning webs of deceit and double dealings. He half expects her to slink into his office later and try to pry a favor out of him as payment for making him look good in front of the entire galaxy. Such is politics. The next affair is about a debate of mineral rights between two systems. In particular, a natural deposit of Jehes crystal had been discovered on an asteroid, unfortunately between the time of its discovery and subsequent claim, and now the asteroid had moved, and now it was in another system's territory, and they wanted to lay claim to the moderately large deposit with pre-drilled extraction holes and equipment already in place. It's a bit of a sticky situation, and while it's clear that the system that's trying to gain control of the mine is making a deliberate power grab, the issue has shades of gray. Apparently, low-profile explosives in hollowed-out asteroids have been used before to basically throw rocks with bombs in them into space stations and even planets before, and they were concerned about the security of not being able to fully police and control every bit of land within their sovereign territory. Thankfully, many others spot the possible solution and the reminder that they have full rights to police the mine, but not steal the mine, come to the forefront. So long as the workers and equipment come from the former territory, its safety standards will be according to that territory. However, into each system it passes into, it will fall under the policing and protective jurisdiction there, meaning the taxes to law enforcement are to be paid in full. Not the best solution, but a compromise. Admiral Cistern cannot help but mutter to himself as he mentally imagines pirates and the sheer amount of charitable donations required to keep such things away. The next issue is just as gray, although perhaps leaning closer to black. There has been an overabundance of food in one sector, and another has entered a famine. The sector with the bumper crop has deliberately marked up the cost of food rather than down, as is usual for when there's a glut of any product in the market. They did this just before the famine was announced, suggesting insider trading. Investigations have been performed, and so far, no sign of foul play. However, the time the investigations took meant that for 2 months the dwindling food supplies have gone down further. He presses one of the buttons before him. Aside from the yay or nay when it comes to voting, there is also an interrupt button. Admiral Cistern, you have an inquiry over this point of contention, Lady Tyconped asks, and he stands up as a drone comes in to give him the floor in away. I've gone over some of the legislation in question, but I cannot see the actual difficulty occurring. Is it not possible for Planet Branna to simply purchase their food elsewhere? If the nearest supplier is overcharging, then one can go around them. With standard galactic shipping, the famine could have already been broken by merely making their purchases out there. Unless there is some form of legislation that forces the Branna system to purchase its food from the Hallwind system. A fair question. Is there such a provision? Lady Tyconped asks. There is a very distinct silence as the ambassador from Branna just smiles and the Hallwind ambassador is frantically looking through her files. Is the matter settled? The matter is indeed settled, and both women return to their seats. The affairs move on to some less immediate concerns about basic administration in some areas and how several rather important companies have their patents expiring or have been released to open source by hackers. Admiral makes a few important notes. He'll have the opportunity to grab some stocks as this information comes out and later recover. A chance to make a good amount of money. Things go down to the last minute and the council goes into recess. There are a lot of tired groans as everyone gets up to head back to their offices. Ambassador Tal and Admiral Cistern wait for Lady Tyconped to emerge. Noticeably, her tail feathers are still metallic in sheen, and she's walking stiffly. Admiral Cistern steps in from the side, gently guides her chin upwards, and kisses her lightly. She instantly decompresses and shortly leans into the kiss. Better? Yes. She answers softly. Aria 4 was lucky I didn't have a launcher on me. There's some things you don't just bring up, especially in front of the entire galaxy. Ambassador Tal grumps out and Admiral Cistern nods. Indeed, which means she was either completely unbalanced or trying to distract from something else. Admiral Cistern notes and Ambassador Tal nods as she thinks. Maybe the asteroid, or perhaps wanted the famine to keep going. Who can say? Ambassador Tal says before shrugging. Lunch, perhaps? I think that coffee I had has run its course. You need to eat more for breakfast, you know. You humans have a huge caloric requirement, and you eat only as much as a Tret. Lady Tyconped scolds him, and he shrugs. Pardon, but in the mood of ballooning out like some other high-ranking military men. I'd rather stay in trim fighting form than go to seed. For that I need to regulate what I eat. Admiral Cistern notes calmly and then turns his head as he feels the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. Lady Aria 4 is giving him a dirty look from afar. Again, it could mean anything with these people. She could be angry at him or angry at the women surrounding him because she wanted something from him she can't get with them around. There's no way of knowing unless she confronts him directly. Instead, he allows his alien wives to lead him to a local establishment, and he orders a Canador dish for himself. They're the most flavorful, and the portions are actually to scale with a human's needs. What happens next will happen, and he will be ready and fed. Neither armies nor admirals march on empty stomachs.